Okay, hi. This is the Wednesday IGDA webinar, and I want to remind people that this session is being recorded. You will be able to hear me, but I will not be able to hear you. If you have a question, there's an interface, and you can type in the question, and I will respond to it. And hi, I'm Judy Tyrer, and I'm the CEO of 3 Turn Productions. We are the creators of EverJane, the virtual world of Jane Austen. When I was asked to do this, I know this is normally a session on AI, but AI is not my area of expertise, and so I was asked to do this, and so I wanted to go into an area where I could offer something really unique. And for me, that's scalability and scaling on servers and dealing with, when you're talking about huge numbers of users. My experience, I was lead engineer for Sony Online Entertainment for Magic the Gathering Tactics. We also integrated card games into free realms. But what I'm going to talk about most is from my experience as lead engineer of Second Life for the server team. We ran 650,000 simulations, and we had 10,000 physical hardware servers across 3 geographic locations. These are important things. When you start talking about 650,000 simulations, you stop talking in terms of numbers, and you begin to think in terms of percentages. So I remember one of the funniest moments was when I was learning how to use the tools to show the grid and how everything's going, and I went, oh my God, we had 500 servers crash. And I was very upset about that. And then they said, yeah, that's 0.03% of the grid, Judy. So then I wasn't upset about it anymore. So learning how to look and think in terms of scale, it's a way of thinking as well. The first thing that happens when you begin to scale up at this level, at a really high level, and I think that's important, is how you're going to deploy. When you're deploying 650,000, when we would deploy Second Life, it was like, I have lost something on my screen. It was a day of deployment. So I mean, you were talking about 10 hours from beginning to the end. Now, we don't want to bring down your whole grid for 10 hours, obviously. So you have to do a lot of, I'm on the wrong, for some reason, let me start this again. There we go. So you want to make sure you do rolling updates, and that becomes very critical. And as you do it, so you're bringing down some servers while you have others running. It's the one problem that you have when you do this, of course, is if you change any kind of data or any kind of API interface in which people, in which things are talking to each other, then you can't do a rolling update. You have to have some kind of way of blocking between the servers that have the new code and the servers that have the old code. That's really important. Another thing I want to talk about when you're deploying at this scale is it becomes very important where your geographic locations are. When you have, especially when you have servers that have to talk to each other. So a tool of some kind, we had a tool that would allow us to completely restructure the grid so here's what happens. You have to keep a certain number of hardware available in case something happens, so you can always move things over to new hardware. So we have, a couple of hundred spare servers waiting just in case. Now, Second Life, we were really lucky. Second Life owns their own server farms, so I got to actually work with the server farm people and get to know how the server farms work. But what happened, so like Iraq, this happened once, the power supplies wear out over time, and so a power supply just wore out, and a whole rack goes down. So with a rack going down, what you've lost, 5 servers, and which is a couple hundred simulations. That's not exactly accurate, but what happens is you then move those over to new servers. So over time, your grid begins to split apart, and it becomes fragmented. And you suddenly find that you have messages bouncing from New York to San Francisco, back to New York, over to London, when with a little bit of forethought, you could put all those servers in London, and you really only had to bounce around in London and never go to the US with messages. So a lot of it is how you deploy your servers, and the necessity of being able to do that. So one of the things I don't have a slide here for is the importance of tools when you get scaling. So having a tool that can read the grid and understand who needs to talk to each other and reorganize it was really, really important. The next thing to worry about when you start to scale is security, because the ways you can get hacked are exponential as you scale up. And what's more important is the people who want to hack you also grows, because now, you know, you have a lot of users when you have, you know, you're talking about millions of users as opposed to, I have like 20 active users right now because we're building a game. So it's a completely different kind of security issue. I'm not going to talk about server security because that's a whole topic in and of itself, and there are people who are much better qualified to give that talk. So, but I do want to talk about how the way you build software, the way we build our game servers makes us vulnerable, even if people, you know, because people can get past your firewall, they're going to, but even if they can't, once they get into your server, there's all kinds of things that they can do. And this is where I think I have something to offer people, because this is where you can code and you can prep for it. DOS attacks are really popular. If you have the ability, now Second Life is particularly at risk because they publish user-generated content. User-generated content is really scary. They have scripts running in there that can run, if you can run a script, if it can get outside of your server environment, it can wreak havoc on your system. And they're always trying to find ways to do that. So I know we had to in Second Life, we definitely had a barrier between the scripting and what the scripts can do. We use, those of you who use Unity, they have that same barrier too. I run Keep Alive servers, and you cannot spawn a process outside of Unity from within Unity. So you have to have like your own process doing these other things. It's very complicated. But the fact that I have a Keep Alive server is itself a risk, because that's not inside the Unity. That's closer to the firewall. If somebody could get in there, then that's one of the systems that I have to be very careful about security. One of my favorite DOS attacks, I thought I'd share some more stories because that's the fun part. One of my favorite DOS attacks is when the people would embed objects within objects within objects. So we had a stack of boxes. So when you import it, it looks like a red box. Okay, you got this box. What's the worry? Well, inside the box was a script that enabled the box to clone itself and just continually to do that. So people were taking these boxes and dropping them, and then they would push a button and the boxes would explode, and suddenly your screen is filled with 500 million boxes. And they would do that, and the boxes would expand until the server crashed. So that's the kind of DOS attack, especially if you let user-generated content into your game, and a lot of games are doing that now. Minecraft, we plan on doing a little bit of that. So that's something to be very aware of in making sure that in your code you're not giving users any way that they can suddenly bring your system to its knees. The other fun thing that we had for security was theft, and again, this is because we had user-generated content. But people would put up invisible screens in front of other people's objects. And in the case of one situation where you bought pet food from this vendor, and someone put a blank screen in front of the vendor. So it's kind of like those ATM things where they put the screens over it and they can capture your information and you're not actually sending it to the bank. Same thing. They just put this invisible screen on, so people thought they were buying food from the people they were meaning to buy. The money was actually going into someone else's account. And it became a problem because this food was programmed to actually feed these pets, and the pets were all starving and dying, and so trying to explain to people that you're trying to keep pixelated pets that don't really exist from dying as your job is sort of a fun Christmas party conversation. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was how to offload things off of your main server. A lot of times, like right now, my servers, because we're just a tiny little thing, we're just building, my servers are running, the database is on there, the login server is on there, 2 game servers are on there, so everything's in one place. But what you want to do, and we're running out right now, to be honest, I have to expand my servers because we're running out of file system space. So the things that you can do to keep this from happening, and you want to keep your server CPU completely free to do nothing but run the simulation, particularly if you have a lot of physics, Second Life, you really wanted dedicated CPU for your servers. One thing you can do is all of your logs will grow exponentially, and so you need to set up some way of getting the logs off of the servers. I recommend a centralized server just for nothing but logs, where all the logs for all the services go, and that way you can go through and they're in one place, and that place has nothing to do except save logs. So you're not sucking down CPU time, and it's just much easier to be able to get at everything. The other thing that you can pull out is chat. Chat at this scale is really big, so having a separate chat server is really critical. And inventory, depending on how much inventory your players have. I'm talking MMOs, so we have inventory. Again, inventory is a really good system to pull off into its own server. And so as you go through and you're looking at how your service works and how it's going to scale, what you don't need to keep on the CPU that's running the simulation is something to always keep in mind, and that's going to be, and you're going to have a lot of centralized storage services for all of these logs, particularly if you're saving chat logs and you need them to keep them for periods of time. The other thing that we do that's really is having database replicas can help a lot. If you replicate your database, then all the people in London are working off the London replica. All the people in LA are working off the LA replica, and again, you're not sending, you're not hitting the lag that comes. I mean, you get more lag the further away you are from your servers, so you're kind of limiting lag in that way as well. I'm sure a lot of this may be obvious to some of you, but and then one other thing that happens that you don't think about when you start dealing with scalability is now you have shared resources. Now your player, the server doesn't necessarily know. You pulled your inventory, so the sim server doesn't know the inventory. The sim server isn't getting the chat. So you're now sharing a lot of information, and that means we're going to have to pass a lot of data between servers. And that's where knowing your geographic locations is really helpful. If you can put everybody that has to talk to each other on the same rack, there's no lag. You split the racks, there's a little bit more lag. You split it across buildings, you've got more and more lag. So particularly in things like, I know when I was working on Second Life, region crossings were being worked on because they took a very, very long time. And one of the reasons they took so long was that we were sending data all over the planet. I mean, we were just sending data everywhere, and it needed to be, because it was bouncing around from server to server, we didn't have the sense of putting two servers that need to talk to each other together, and that's why we built this tool that did all of that. And that pretty much covers most of what I wanted to talk about in terms of scaling, but I really wanted to explain that it becomes, it grows exponentially so fast. So the smallest hole, a tiny security hole, that if you only had one server, nobody would even find it. You have two servers, you're not likely to find it. 100, maybe it's a little obvious. 600,000, people are going to find those little holes. So you have to be much more careful about making sure that you isolate your server code in a way that you can't get hacked. Your DOS attacks aren't going to kill you. And that's so. If you have any questions, I'm going to have to take the slideshow off for a brief second because I lost my questions thing. So my name. So I'm going to give you my stuff. If you want to talk to me, it's Judy3T at 3Turn Productions. Our website is www.3turnproductions.com, and our game is Everjane. You can look at it at www.everjane.com. And let's see. So now you're going to see, there's the webinar. So I can look at questions if anybody has any questions. Quiet group. Okay, I should have talked a lot slower. I just looked at the time. And I don't see, so if nobody has any questions, I can go in a little more detail. Does anybody have anything they would like for me to go into greater detail on in terms of dealing with security or hacking or tools that are necessary? I didn't do a lot with tools. I could go further into that. Okay, there we go. I see the questions. I'm just trying to get to them. 1 second. All right. Aside from compartmentalizing things, what other methods do you suggest for cloud-based? The two things that I focus most on are bandwidth, because not everybody has broadband. I'm one of those unfortunate few because I live in the middle of nowhere. We don't have broadband up here, so I pay a lot of attention to bandwidth. So a lot of things, for example, Unity, we can go into this a little bit because I've had to fix it, but Unity, if you do their method of networking, they have syncs on all the objects that are networked, so you end up syncing every network tick. And it seems to me that if something is standing still, not moving, not changing, and not altering, why are we updating it every network tick? So that's one of the things that I pay attention to. Again, I think that's the biggest one for me that I really care most about is making sure that you're not, because you don't want to hit lag. Where you can do, there's some other things I was going to talk about in terms of that. For example, if you're streaming in your data from the cloud, you want to make sure that you're not utilizing your servers for that. So setting up the cloud to talk directly to the clients and not have the server involved for streaming in data is one of the things that we've done. So it's still a little bit of compartmentalizing, but you're compartmentalizing differently. So you're saying, okay, I don't want, my client needs to talk to this to get data, but do I want that to, but do I need the server to know what data I'm getting? How does the server get the same data? Those are sort of a lot of the questions you can ask. Another question is, please go further into tools. The most important tool that I used more than any was the crash tool. When you need to have a way, you need a tool that lets you know, first the servers are crashed, because if you have good ops people, and we plan on having that, you need to be able to alert people that they need to take care of things. Now, my servers run on Keep Alives, so they should automatically restart. Sometimes they'll be in a state when they go to automatically restart, you can't actually log in. So that's actually worse. I have to fix that. So a tool that tells you that the server's crashed, and then the ability to take that tool. We talked about putting all of your logs into a centralized place. So what we had was, if a server crashed, it did a snapshot of the logs so that you knew where to get them. So you could go into the tool, you could look at where the crash, and we have 650,000 simulations, so there's not one crash. You're going to see 100, 200 of this same crash. So you have to be able to look at the log when the server crashes and be able to determine whether it's the same crash that another server's had, in which case you kind of lump all those together. That was a really important tool. So I could say, oh, look, I've got 100 servers that have this particular crash. I have 50 servers that have this particular crash. Now, we all know that servers aren't nice and they don't crash in exactly the same spot. Sometimes that 150 servers could be the same bug, but they manifest themselves with different log information of what's going on just before the crash hit. That for your developers is probably the most valuable tool. The other thing that tool gives you is it gives you the ability to hook that into your bug tracking. So your bug tracking has the database, which has the crash thing that you can then link to, and you can just click on a link to get to what you're looking at and why you have a problem. The other tool that I'm going to mention, and that Linden Lab uses, and it was produced, it's now viable, you can purchase it, but Philip, who is the CEO of Linden Lab, who created Second Life, built it, and it's probably the best tool for a large corporation ever. The bigger your company, the more important this tool is, the more fantastic it is. It has a horrible name. It's called the Love Machine, and you have to forgive him the name, but it's so totally cool and awesome. So what the Love Machine is, okay, I'll answer that question. So what the Love Machine does is it hooks into every IM chat, every bug. So you can do it in your bug database. It's in the IM chat. It's in all of the meeting software. So if you're in any meeting, it's easy to do. When somebody does something nice, you say, send love to this person for doing this great thing. Then every 3 months, the financial people would sit down and they would go over the books and they would decide how much of a bonus was going out for that quarter. And that would go to people through the Love Machine. So every love then at the end of the quarter would be worth something. So you get like, I would get, maybe I'd get 30 loves one quarter. I got more than that, but 30 loves one quarter. Every love is worth $3. Well, now you're talking about getting some real money in there. That's like a night out on the town. And that's not what makes the Love Machine so fantastic. What makes the Love Machine so fantastic is that what happens to your corporate environment when everybody is busy thanking people for doing the right thing is it becomes an environment of thank you. And it becomes a really positive place to work. And so you start looking for ways, and because it's real money in people's pockets, you start looking for ways to thank people and send them love and everything. And so that's like an amazing tool. It's not a programming tool, but it's an amazing tool for managing large teams. So I just wanted to throw that in when we're talking about tools. The other tools that, of course, are important are your customer support tools. The customer support people need the ability to get into the database and be able to modify the database and fix people's accounts, fix people's characters, return inventory, whatever it is. So that's the tool. The other tool you need for that is you're keeping logs, because how do you know the inventory was there if you can't go back to the log and find that it was actually in there? Another question is, what would be the method to calculate how many servers your game needs? Yeah, that's a really good one. I'm working on that now. What are the variables you need to consider to calculate the number of servers needed? What I plan on doing is I plan on putting in as many clients as I can until I start to see lag, at which point, until the servers start to lag. Okay, so my servers run at 60 frames per second. My clients run at 30. They probably could run at 60, but we want to put a lot of art in there, so we're keeping them at 30 and making that okay. So the servers, when the servers begin to slow down, then that's how many clients it can handle. The other is if possible, I hope to dedicate my servers per CPU. I know Linden Lab, we did that. When you bought land, you could buy either a chunk that owned the CPU, or you could buy it so that 4 people shared a CPU. And the land was priced according to CPUs. They had a different business. It's a very different business model than we're used to. So really, it's just seeing how many I can run. The variables I want to look at are whether is the frame rate of the server, how fast the server is running. Unity can give me that as a Unity server, and also again bandwidth. I run Wireshark on all my. If you don't, Wireshark's free, and it's a really good network capture. So, and the other thing that Wireshark can do, so back in tools and variables and how to calculate how much you need, Wireshark will allow you to, and actually Unity lets you do this too, but, or ULink does. It allows you to muck up your connection. So you can say, show me a really bad connection, and you can emulate it. So again, I want to emulate bad connections and see how they run. What I plan on doing, right now, I'm looking at planning on running 500 players per server. I'm pretty sure that's way too low. So the problem, and here's what's hard with calculating how many servers you need, because this is the reality. Until you have your servers built, you don't know how much CPU they're going to take. You don't know how much bandwidth they're going to need. So I'll need, let's see, 5. I need 5 servers. What I'm doing right now is I know I need to have a replica of my database. So I'm going to move my database off my Windows server onto a Linux server and then have the replica be the Windows version. So that's one thing. So I know I need that server. I need a database server. And the other thing that you can do right now is if you set yourself up for virtual servers with some of these server farms, I use Softlayer. And their virtual servers, I can go into the dashboard and I can say, I need 5 more servers now. And they will build themselves, and within an hour I'll have those servers that I can then use. So I would recommend, here's what I'm doing, so therefore I am recommending it. I want to give, I want to have my virtual servers set up and ready to go when we launch, so that as we begin to notice that things are lagging and things are getting weak, we're ready to roll out more and more. And I'm hoping we'll have that set up correctly. I think that's the biggest problem that MMOs have when they first launch, is that you launch, everybody's really excited, oh my God, you don't have enough servers set up. And so you're running to get them set up, and then everybody's not excited 3 months later, and now you have all the servers you have to deal with. And that's the advantage of the virtual servers. So going through a virtual server farm helps for that. I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, if you are doing any networking, I really recommend you get Wireshark. It will save you so much time. You can do all kinds of captures. You can pick the port you want to capture and only capture one part of your network. Let's see. Any other questions? Okay, well, let's see what else we can talk about. Dealing with, okay, one of the other things that's interesting is we talked a little bit about doing a rolling update. One of the things that the lab does, the lab sends out new simulations. They update their server side every week. So there's a new rollout every single week. And I worked a lot with the team getting that to work well, so we didn't have to roll back as much. So I think that's what they have there is a really pretty good process for rolling out. They split the grid. Okay, so obviously there's a test grid, right? So your test server is not, you do know, we separate our test servers from our main servers. Although I did work on an operating system once where we built the operating system on the test system while we built the operating system. I don't recommend that. It was fun and interesting, but yeah, it was hard. There was a little too much of eating your own dog food. So, but what they did for their regular grid was, part of the grid was beta, and part of the grid was release. But you didn't know which part you were on. So you might be on the beta, you might be on the release, because it rotated around so that not everybody was always on the beta stuff. And so what we did was we had 3 beta, we would have 3 candidates every week that had been through QA and were ready to be merged. We would put them on their own little channels, let them run for a week, see how they ran, and then QA had the final decision on which of the candidates was most viable to go into the main code. QA was often heavily influenced. Actually, it was kind of fun because the meeting was on Friday mornings, and so usually about Thursday afternoon, people who were decision makers in that meeting would start getting requests from people who would be lobbying. Can you get mine out? Mine really needs to go. It's so important. Marketing is waiting for this. So it was always between marketing, customer support, and development. Everybody always wanted their release to be in the list that would go out. So that was actually one of the fun meetings. So they would take it and they would merge in. So we'd always on Friday mornings, you did a snapshot, everybody finished, they merged with the release candidates. Monday they'd find out what release was going out, and that was the merge that went, and on Tuesday they rolled everything out the door. So it was an interesting deployment strategy. It was so smooth. It got really smooth over time, and once people learned, that's the hardest thing, was getting people to understand how to merge. It took a long time. Programmers were all stubborn, right? I know I am. And so it took a long time to convince people that it was, if you branched, you could just, it was okay to merge, and if the merge didn't work, it was okay that you spent 2 hours doing that and throwing it away. And I can understand not wanting to do it. So that was the toughest sell, was getting the programmers on board to merge early with the risk of throwing that away. But we bought, by moving the date from Monday to Friday, because we used to decide on Monday and we decided on Friday now. We bought an entire weekend of QA from our QA staff that we didn't have before, which made the rollbacks less often. The ability to roll back a bad release is also very, very important when you're at huge scale. So you need to be able to roll back quickly. If it takes 10 hours to deploy, you don't want to have to take 10 hours to roll back. So that was the other thing that we dealt with a lot. And then it was always fun. The thing I liked most, you know, is sort of being the point man for when there's a fire on the grid. You know, the grid is on fire, the servers are crashing, everything's a disaster. And being the person who gets in there and gets to, you know, fix it. So we did a lot of that. That happens a lot. And this is the other thing, when you scale up, you really do scale up in terms of number of bugs and number of crashes and number of disasters that are going to hit you. And so having the tools and the process in place for handling all that was really, really important as well. I'm a big follower. If you haven't read the checklist manifesto, I highly recommend it. So we had checklists of, okay, who has to know what has to get done? Who has to do what? You know, how do we, and having that helped a lot. Just anything else anybody wants to know in terms of, I'm trying to think of what other tools we used that would also be of value. I know the tools that I'm building right now, because I'm using ldap for my database, so I'm going to say if you're choosing to do stuff, if you're using common tools that you can get the tools off the web for, I mean, those of us who are indies who are struggling and have no income yet. So I use a thing called, ldap has a tool called JExplorer, which is how my customer support team can get directly into the database. It goes directly into the database, they can modify it, they can change things as they want. That's a little bit scary because, you know, they can also break the universe that way. But JExplorer is awesome, and ldap is old technology. I'm using it because again, I have my AI design, my game design is very heavy on data and storing huge amounts of data because we have to store all of the gossip. And so having a fast read database was the most important thing for me, which is why I chose ldap. So that's the other thing, is knowing what your game is going to be doing the most of, then that's what you want to be fast. You know, I wanted the fastest read database I could get. Let's see, so that's, if I'm being any help here. I'm just thinking, the other tools we had, most of the rest of them were really customer support tools. But the one that I really liked was the ability to get into a crash and click and see all the logs that went there. Server performance for every user versus number of users per performance. Oh, well, the frame rate on the server is really for every user on the server. Is I'm looking at that server performance for not individual. So I'm looking, okay, so what I'm saying. Once individual performance is starting to go down, that means it's going down for every user on. If the server is starting to lag, if the frame rate, if my main server, I mean, what does my main loop do? My main loop does says who's, you know, it checks to see, you know, to put everybody that's near each other to do. We do a lot of things that are based on proximity and whether you're in close proximity with each other. So when that starts to slow down, it's going to impact the performance for every user on the server. So at that number, once that starts to go down, then I know that's kind of my max number, or that's the low water mark for starting to migrate people into another server. Our servers are going to be villages, so you choose a place that you live, and you live in the server itself as a village. I know that other MMOs do their servers differently, so like the servers aren't necessarily regional. Ours are completely regional, so I want to make sure that it doesn't. So at that point, will I spawn another server if I have an extra CPU? You have to. Yeah, servers are hard. Hardware server versus software server. So if my software server is showing lag, I can put it on another CPU and dedicate it to that CPU. But once I have 4 CPUs and they're running as many servers as they can, then I know my number at which I want to say I don't want more than X number of people. So my software servers, I could probably run 4 per CPU right now with 500 per server. We haven't done that, but we'll have to run the tests. And what I may do, I would like to not have to, but I know for Second Life I did the pricing for it, and they have labs that will do testing for you for things like scale. So it costs a little money, but it may save enough money in the long run to be worth it to have one of these compatibility labs come in and say, okay, can you put 5,000 people and just run these numbers? And they'll set it up so, and you know, because I can run 10 per box on my boxes, but then they start to really lag out because my network is so bad. So that's the thing. Okay. Server pricing would be interesting to know because I find it very difficult to learn what is actually the average price. It is something that's never spoken about in conferences. It is. It's terrible. I can tell you that my server is supposed to cost me $650 a month, but it only costs $275 a month. That's not much help, is it? I use a company called Softlayer, and they have, if you are an indie, I'll just tell you this right now, if you're thinking about getting into servers and you're an indie, they have a partnership program which is awesome. If you get accepted as one of their partners, they give you 1 year of free servers. So you have a year to work for free to figure out how many servers do I need, what's my capacity, yada yada. My year is up, that's why it's $275 a month. And that's what I had to do. I just went, okay, so I just went and started looking at server companies and looking at deals I could get, and I just started building and seeing how it was. I put in my budget $600 per 1,000 users for servers because I'm very conservative. I think that's way more than it's going to cost me. But I'd rather budget at more than it's going to cost me and discover it doesn't cost as much. Like budgeting it at $650 and discovering it was $275, that was really good news. So that's really, I think that's important. I think the reason people don't talk about it in conferences is because it's so variable. I mean, are you using an EWS server? Amazon's free EWS servers are great, but they're slower than Christmas. But you can get to use them for free. And that's, but I recommend, you know, finding a server farm and, you know, talking to them. And virtual servers, I do know the virtual servers are more costly than the fixed servers, and we're getting ready to switch to a fixed server because of that, and also because we need two. We need the extra database because we're running out of, right now I can only run one. I can't run 2 servers on my system. I don't have enough file system space. So. Anyway, so that, you know, that's my price, $275 a month for 1 server. And it's a Windows server, and it's a virtual Windows server. And it has, I've maxed out the amount of disk space I get. This is what I did not know, is that, and I learned this in working at Linden Lab, hard drives are really cheap for desktops. You know, because I'm like, oh, God, get a terabyte. It's $100 for a terabyte disk. Yeah, you can't do that for servers. Your server hard drives apparently are very expensive. And so disk space is like the hardest thing to come by. And so that's where, you know, and then in the virtual servers it's even worse. So that's why we have to switch to a fixed server to get more disk space. But I'm real happy. I mean, I'm not, I'm their partner because they gave me a year of free service. They are a subsidiary of IBM, so I'm not going to say that Softlayer is the best, but I'm pretty happy with them. But there's probably a dozen server farms out there that you can, start looking at and talking to them. Server prices is also the one thing I would love to talk about. This whole free-to-play movement that we're in is killing people who are running servers, because so one of the reasons, if you're familiar with my game, and most people won't be, we have a limited amount of time that you can play for free, simply because I wanted to avoid the problem of having to support a server that I have all these clients running on and nobody's paying for it but me. Because we don't, it's $100,000 we got on Kickstarter didn't go very far. So it takes a lot to build an MMO and I'm also talking about persistent servers. These are different than if you're doing a regular multiplayer game where you're just doing matching, because those servers are up and then they're down really fast. This is for consistency. These are for persistent servers that stay alive forever. And I do recommend keep alive servers to save you from having, you don't want your server to stay down. So if you can just kick it back up again as soon as you notice that it's down, that's the best. And so the keep alives really do help. So, and greetings. We got a greetings here from the Ultimate Engine 143 Play. I'll just say hello. I'll have to check that engine out. So I use Unity, and it's doing pretty good so far. We have some problems with it, but the networking. I also, on the other thing I use for networking, I don't use Unity raw networking. I use ULink, which is by much different software. And the one thing, I am a zealot where ULink is concerned. Not only is their software really, not only does their networking layer work for everything I want it to do, they have the best customer support team I have ever worked with, except for SciMass, but that's different. I'll get into that too. So what Much Different has done is, if they will put somebody, if you have a bug, they will make sure that it gets fixed. They have they just have great. I looked at Photon, and they just didn't match what I needed at the time. For the other thing I mentioned, I'm using LDAP. I work with another partner named SciMass, and they think LDAP has a place in gaming, and so they're working with me. They also have amazing customer support. So so I've gotten really spoiled. I like customer support that sits with me until we solve the problem, instead of, oh well, So and these two customer support teams do that. I'm getting ready to sign up. Has anybody ever used the Unity customer support contract? Because I'm getting ready to think of signing up for that for a couple of bugs we can't seem to find. Okay, so can you suggest me which server is based for a multiplayer card game? At Sony, the card games we used, they ran a Python server. It ran on Linux. It wasn't a game engine though. They built it themselves. So I kind of don't know the best, if there's one out there already. Why did you choose Unity over Unreal 4? Unreal 4 is only cheaper if you don't make money. I plan on making a lot of money, and I don't want to have to be sending them every month 25%. Well, at the time that I was choosing, Unreal license was 25% of your net profit, of your gross profit. And I am very leery of gross profit deals anyway. If you're, I mean, Unreal is right for them. That's the best revenue, but for me, I don't want to write royalty checks. So that was the other reason. And they've gotten it down to 5%, which is a lot more reasonable, and maybe at 2% I might look at it. But if you strike it big, you're writing. And the problem also with writing, and this comes from, I was a Hollywood wannabe for a long time. And so I learned a lot about the film industry. And they say in Hollywood the most creative people are the accountants. But what can happen with a royalty deal like that is you can find yourself making a lot of money, but not making any profit. It happens to business all the time. I'm making money, where's my profit? It's not there. But they don't care if you have profit. They're still going to take money. So you can actually end up in debt with them. And I just don't want, I didn't want to go down that road. The second feature about it, and my artist disagrees, and we have lots of discussions, but I'm looking at very low production quality for this game. Fortunately, the artist does disagree and is upping the production quality way beyond what I was expecting, and I'm really happy with it. But I'm really in a niche market, and I'm building a small game for a niche market, and I just feel that the gameplay is everything. Good package for making good profit. As soon as I tell you what, as soon as I make a profit, I'll be happy to share how I did it. We're not profitable at the moment. We're still in development. In fact, we just now have a game. We really haven't had a game. The whole first year it was all infrastructure. So my business plan looks awesome in terms of profit. The business, you know, I mean, if you haven't, I sat down and the people I talked to who know business better than I do convinced me that I needed to look at incredible success. What would I define as incredible success? So I said, okay, 20,000 players I'm going to define as incredible success because I need 3,000 to break even and pay back. That's to break even plus pay back the investment that's gone in. At 20,000 players, I'm making a lot of profit. So I think a lot of it is just, it's really business sense. I mean, it's getting the servers as cheap as you can get them. It's making sure you don't, I mean, the best way to make profits in software development is don't make mistakes. Don't put bugs in your software and you'll make a lot more profit than if you have really buggy software. But that's like, that gets us into, and there's a whole other speech, I'm actually trying to write a book, into development process of how to, you know, streamline the development process. Software development process is still an interesting arena in which to work. I'm not a big believer in running at a dead-out sprint every 3 weeks for 2 years, so we don't follow Scrum. We have our own process. Right now, I am using, I'll pop it up right here. I can show you since you're sharing my screen. I'm using Softlayer. Don't look at my Facebook. There we go. So this is the company. It's called Softlayer, and it should come up in a second. There it is. And so it's just softlayer.com, and it brings you to this portal, and I'm not going to give you all my passwords and stuff because that'll be stupid. But, well, that at least is there. But so you just go in and it takes you, I'm not going to go into the portal because that gives you the password to my servers. But it's Softlayer, and it's great. And yeah, so I would really recommend trying. Do not sign up first. See if you can get into their partner server system before you sign up. They have a really great dashboard, and I would show it you, except it gives you the password to my system right there on the dashboard, so I'm not going to show it to you. But it has, and that's where you can just, it just says, hey, you need more space here. Okay, click there, and they'll give you more file system space, or they'll give you, you know, they'll do this, and then they have, you can also call them. So I have had to call them like on a Saturday night when things were really, I ran out of space and my system was corrupt and it was really bad. And they sat on the phone with me for 30 minutes. They went in, they fixed it all, we got it all correct. So they also have, I partner with people with good customer support in case you can tell that's real important to me. You know, because it's tough getting these games out. Can I read this? Sure. I will check you out. I am Judy Tyrer. I'm also Judy 3T in places. And my Linden name was Merciel. So if you were in Second Life and you ran into Merciel Linden, that would have been me. But yeah, so hopefully this has been a little bit helpful, and it talks about for people who haven't gotten to work with scale, it does. It really comes at you fast, and what I've been really trying to do is take that and figure out what I can do now to make my code scalable. Yeah. So the more I can do now, the more I can isolate things now, the more I can modularize now, the easier it is to pull it all apart. exactly. Oh, poker and puzzle placement. I was just thinking that doing the scalability in servers was a poker puzzle. You know, it really is. It's definitely a puzzler. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and I hope this was helpful, and it should go up. Tristan will probably get it up on the log at some point soon. And yeah, we'll be we launched January of 2016, so we still have another year in development, and then hopefully we'll see what happens. And I'll let you know if we make a profit. That is kind of the goal. So far, see, we got $100,000 from Kickstarter. We had to pay a lot of that to the government, so I'm not an accountant, but taxes are part of it. So I'd say so far I've put in probably $200,000. I am hoping to go out. So what I'm working on right now is I'm working on the third draft of my business plan, which is actually going to be a slide deck instead of a business plan. If I can get additional funding, that'll be awesome, and if not, then I will be doing a talk at GDC in 2016 called How to Build an MMO for Under $250,000. I would like to not have to give that talk. So hopefully I will be able to get some additional funding, but it's, you know, there's not a lot. We did Kickstarter. We had a successful Kickstarter. We got $109,000. The business plan right now, we are free to play for 3 months. Okay, so we have a weird, we're trying a new business model for our MMO. We're combining a microtransaction and subscription model. And since we take place in the Regency period, so your subscription dictates your social standing. So if you're free to play, you play as a peasant who has to get a job, or you can't stay in the game because we're going to throw you out. The base subscription is for the lower gentry, which is what most of Jane Austen's work is about, with people in the lower gentry. If you want to pay a little bit more, you can be in the higher gentry, and you can, you know, have so you can either work your way up through playing the game, or you can buy in at a higher level and have an estate and be, you know, you can even own your own town. You know, gamification is one of those words that we use a lot, and I'm not entirely sure how to phrase it. So I would say no, it's not gamification per se. I think of gamification as taking something that's kind of boring and sort of sticking a game on top of it to try and make it more interesting. Hopefully this is really a game. I mean, we're doing historical accuracy, but we're trying to make it so that the history is part of the gameplay. So it's, but yeah, so we're doing, but we also allow you to buy. So for microtransactions, you get, so when you get your subscription, you get like a new dress. Maybe you get a new dress every month. And that's part of your subscription, but that's only one dress, and maybe you want 3 dresses because you're going to 3 different parties and you don't want to look the same. So you can buy 2 other dresses through our marketplace, or eventually you can. The marketplace will be set up internally but not externally by the time we launch. The external marketplace is coming in later. And that's a whole other interesting topic we should have, which is, you know, how to set priorities when you know you're not going to get every feature you want into your game. Yeah, I can give you a quick, I got about 6 more minutes to tell you about the Kickstarter. It was probably the most intense experience you'll have in game development. I think the thing that made us succeed, we did 2 things right. One, we really established our network before we hit the Kickstarter. So we were already well established in all of our, like in all of the Jane Austen Society groups, in all of the, anything that had anything to do with Regency period, we had a presence in those groups that we could already have. And we were in the months before we launched, so that helped. So we had friends. We also I lined up all my friends and family in investment to do through the Kickstarter, because the friends and family didn't really care about return on investment. They just wanted to see us succeed. So I said, okay, you know, here's how we're doing it. So I had some money lined up before we launched, which was really important. That helped us get going fast. And then we hit every single press point we can. The company's name, okay, can I write in here? Let's see, I can write in one of these. I'll send it to you in a second. The other thing that we did, so we hit all of the press. I mean, we talked to press, and then I spent all day, every day, sending out email to everybody I'd ever known in my entire life. And it's kind of embarrassing because you go, hi, haven't talked to you in 40 years, but you want to give me some money? That's kind of just really awkward. I had a hard time with that. The thing that helped us, though, the most, I think, was the press, because we got so much incredible press. I have like 88, thank you. Thanks, Tristan. I had 88 great articles written about us during the Kickstarter campaign. And that was huge because they, every time an article would come out, you know, people check it out and they'd look into it. So I really think if you want to do a successful, and then the other thing that's important is we're not another zombie first-person shooter game. We are unique. We are different. Nobody has built the world of Jane, you know, the virtual world of Jane Austen. That also was a big help in getting the funding. Because I think it's much harder to stand out in the crowd if you're just another RPG, or you're just another zombie, or you're just another first-person shooter. And I understand why people make those games, because you're interested in them. You want to make something you care about and you love it. And I think that's great as an exercise. But if you're trying to build a business and you want to make money, you're going against, then you're looking at, okay, my little zombie first-person shooter game has to go up against, well, guess what? Blizzard is coming out with a first-person shooter. Ubisoft, how many first-person shooters are there? So you need to be unique, and I think that's really where people aren't putting the effort in to have that thing that makes you stand out. What makes you stand out from the crowd? That's what you need to succeed at Kickstarter. It helps to have, the other things it helps to have your team to have some chops. I mean, some people looked at our team and then they looked at my resume and they went, oh, okay, she knows what she's doing. My resume helped, I really did. I mean, I have a lot of experience. I have 35 years in software development, and that paid off. So we weren't, you know, so we were taken seriously. We didn't look like we were fly-by-night. We knew what we were doing. We had tons and tons of great press. We only had one bad press, and I loved it because they called me an old hag, which is now my favorite description. Though I thought it was not particularly wise to say that to a hiring manager in an industry you want to get into, but that's okay. I don't remember who said it, so it's fine. But other people might. But really, every single day, it was like you wake up in the morning and what can we do? And the other thing that we did that I really recommend is, and this came from somebody else who told me to do it after we started, is we set up all of our rewards and then we thought we were done. No, have a reward. Every 3 days, be able to put out a new reward. Every 5 days, some number of days, constantly be putting out new rewards. We got one thing we did right that was accidental. Those are the best kind, so I'll tell you that. I put a quest in the game that made people have to walk out to the estate. Well, the estate is really far away. And it was interesting that after that quest, I got like 5 people raised their contribution rate to make sure they got a horse in the game, to make it faster to move. So that was a total accident. So we went from there and we said, okay, well, it's Thanksgiving. What are we going to do? So we had our Black Horse Friday. So anybody who pledged on the Friday after Thanksgiving or who wanted to upgrade or get it could get a black horse. So the only black horses in the game will be horses that were gotten on Black Friday. So we did a lot of fun stuff like that. And we only have one reward that has to be mailed out, and it turned out we only had 2 people who wanted it, so we're not going to lose any money in mailing. But the taxes are going to kill you. They take taxes out as if you earned it as income. It's not an investment. They don't treat it as an investment in your business. You can't amortize it over 3 years like you can an investment. So yeah, that we weren't planning on. We were not planning on taking $25,000 and handing it back to the federal government. that was painful. So be sure and add taxes in when you're considering how much you need. And you know, and recognize, I think it's really important, and people aren't recognizing this, and it's going to kill Kickstarter, and it's going to kill these games if we don't. You're under a contractual obligation to deliver. Don't not deliver. Because when people don't deliver through their Kickstarters, it just gives everything a bad name, and it's going to end a really awesome program. So we're dedicated. We will deliver. It won't be as much of a game as we wanted it to be, but it will be a game. It will be delivered. It will have all of what we promised, and that's really important. And I get lectured if you give me half a chance, so I apologize for that. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And it was interesting talking, and it's sort of strange talking to people when you can't see their faces. I missed seeing your faces. But anyway, so I hope I didn't go too fast. I talk too fast when I do that. And it was nice meeting all of you, and best of luck with your games and your careers. Take care.